Hello, welcome to Friday on TLDcast. I'm your host today, Cara North, and I am joined by Rock and Hill today. So we're really excited to talk about a project that we've kind of been working on. We have it on the TLD Slack for you to join if it's something you want to hop into. So looks like we have a couple first-time participants here. Welcome. We're very glad that you're here. We are the Training, Learning, Development community. We typically do about 2 shows a week. And when we're not here, you can actually find us on our Slack channel. And to access that, just go to tldchat.us. And I'll put the link here in the chat in just a moment, or if somebody would be kind enough to do that for me. If it is your first time, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. If you are a frequent flyer on the TLDC Express, please introduce yourself in the chat too, and welcome everybody that's here today. So we're talking today about something called working out loud. And if you're not familiar with working out loud, it's a concept that a gentleman named John Stepper has written a book about. If you're interested in those resources, there is a nice button underneath our video feed today. So you can go to his website, learn a little bit more about it, and get information to learn about what's going on. So with that, I would like for the folks in the boxes with me to introduce themselves, and we will start with Mr. Jonathan Hill. So Jonathan Hill, do you care to tell us who you are, what you do, and how did you get into learning and development?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Hill. John Hill to my friends and John to everybody else. I've been in learning development here in the UK for getting on for 7 or 8 years now, and I've come into it through the insurance industry. So I used to work at a large UK insurer called Direct Line, where they had a massive HR department, and within that a massive L&D department. And my specialism at the time was fraud investigation, which I started to then train new starters in. And that then got me a role as a learning and development consultant, which kind of broadened my remit from just motor fraud claims into training in general. So alongside that, then I got some qualifications in lecturing. So I'm an associate lecturer. So I'm qualified to teach at what we call FE level in the UK, so like adult education. Did a bit of youth work as well, dallied with perhaps becoming a teacher, decided not to. For various reasons, you know, some good, some uninteresting, but my passion was workplace learning and adult learning. And in the past 2 to 3 years, that's really become quite focused on remote and online and e-learning, which I've come to realize in the US is broadly known as instructional design, but in the UK, we'd perhaps call it just e-learning. Non-facilitated, not necessarily in the same room, means of delivering training. Lots of large organizations in the UK have begun to move to this and have moved to it for a little while. And I turned 40 last year, and it feels like I've just kind of discovered the thing I should have been doing 10 years ago. So I'm really quite passionate about my field and trying to learn more. And I see this working out loud model as being a way to really do that. Reading the preface to the book, John Stepper's words about, you know, the time of his life and his career to date, and realizing that in times of kind of peril career-wise, he didn't feel he had a secure network and what he would do next. I'm absolutely secure in my network. I'm not in this position that John was, fortunately, at the beginning of that, but nonetheless, it resonated with me. So that's really, you know, in a very, very roundabout way why I'm here today. I think I've always worked in a kind of working out loud way to an extent. And this structure that's now in front of me with working out loud is something that I think I'd benefit from. And also I can help others benefit from as well. Because as we'll go on to talk about, I think this is about being generous with your expertise and your time, and creating networks that are kind of mutually beneficial, which I think in L&D circles in particular, we're kind of predisposed to do. We often work in those ways, inter-department, inter-companies. There's already quite a good existing community. You know, we're not talking about siloed people here who don't talk to other people in their area. So I'm really, really keen to pursue it. It was either this or have an affair and get a sports car. So I think as midlife crises go, this is far more kind of healthy.
Yeah. Doesn't leave a smoking hole of your life. At least not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. No.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. And again, it's great to finally meet you. We've been connected on social media for a while. Really appreciate everything that you've put out, Jonathan Hill. And we are joined also by Simon Fogg. So Simon, do you want to test your mic now?
Is that working?
Yay!
Yes.
Marvelous.
Great.
I'm persistent.
Yeah, so
Yes,
thank you for your patience. We were trying to get Simon on a little bit earlier today, and for some reason his microphone wasn't working. So Simon actually sounds like he has a little bit more extensive experience in working out loud, so we're going to benefit from his knowledge today. But if you would, could you care to just introduce yourself and tell folks who you are and where you're located at?
I'm in West Yorkshire in the UK. I've had a 35-year IT career. Currently working as an IT services professional, delivering services to large clients across the UK. Mainly project management, service management, and whatever we need to do to get the job done for some pretty significant clients, including Network Rail, victim support, and the UK government.
Outstanding. Well, again, we really appreciate you being here with us. We'll get to kind of your story a little bit later on, talking about the Working Out Loud circles you've participated in, and maybe you can kind of give us some good, the bad, and the ugly as we're going through that. And finally, Mr. J. Rock, do you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Rock. I am a GMP training specialist, GMP standing for Good Manufacturing Practices. And I've been doing that for about 7 years now. The whole Work Out Loud thing is vital to me because I'm the only one doing what I do at work. I'm the lone stranger. And so starting off, I was hungry, looking around, desperately trying to figure out who's already unlocked the locks I'm desperately trying to pick here. And people like Jolt Ola and Melissa Milloway and Alex Salas, and just these heroes that are sharing what they do online and how they do it. David Charney. I could go on and on name dropping all my heroes. But anyway, I'm here and I'm thriving in this community because of the generosity of those that came before. And so I definitely want to step into that stream and share what I've been able to figure out or what I've learned from them as well. So.
Excellent. Well, good. So I don't want to be on the screen big. Hold on just 1 second. There we go. Actually, no. Hold on. I got this. Technical difficulties. There we go. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about kind of why we're doing this. So I think it kind of started, and again, you all jump in as I'm telling the story. It kind of started, Jonathan Hill has really just been killing it lately, doing a lot of these articulate e-learning hero challenges. And not only is he sharing what he's building, but he's sharing his process, and he's sharing kind of the thoughts behind what's going on, behind how he designs what he's been designing. And I actually asked him, I said, hey, have you ever heard of this Working Out Loud concept by John Stepper? And he said, no, I haven't. And so then that became a conversation. I don't know if Jack Hutchison's with us today or not, but Jack was like, hey, how about we do this through the TLDC? How about we start this circle? Let's start this community where we all can get together, pick something to work on, and support each other to go through it. And so that's kind of how we ended up talking about this today. So this was kind of our first week of doing it, and we're still in the process, many of us, of getting kind of Mr. Stepper's book and getting involved. So I'll start with Jonathan Hill. If you want to kind of talk a little bit. Oh, he's already got the book. I got the Kindle version. So I know Jack also has a physical copy of it as well. But I'd like to, again, just start with John and tell us a little bit about, number one, why you're doing what you're doing with the e-learning hero challenges. Two, what have been the benefits? And maybe three, what are some of the areas of opportunity or issues that you've had kind of coming up from doing that?
Yeah, sure. The e-learning hero challenges is just a really, really good way of getting exposure to different e-learning techniques, different topics a lot of the time, different approaches that I might not get exposure to in the course of my job. So I used to work for Direct Line, doing a multitude of different types of training. Now I design just online learning for a company called Commercial Express, also in the insurance industry. But that kind of defines my kind of workflow. There are certain topics I'm dealing with, and I'll probably be dealing with them for the next 6 months to 12 months. And that often, as we speak in L&D terms, content determines context. It means that you're perhaps not using all of the tools at your disposal or keeping as sharp with the software in the way that you would if you'd got a wider range of topics. So that was what appealed to me. I also saw that the community was really, really supportive, interactive. And as John's already highlighted, they'd already picked some locks that I was struggling with. And I'm fortunate to be in a situation where I've been able to pick some locks recently that have helped others. And it's by virtue of having that kind of safe space. I hate that phrase to an extent, but that kind of space where you can have those conversations. The Articulate community is almost a working out loud circle in a sense. It's very specific to a particular product and a particular way of working. But the principle, I think, holds true. You've got this community of people who are talking constantly about what they're doing, sharing what they're doing, being generous about that. It's not just saying, look at this, it's look at this, and here's how I made it, and here's a copy for you to go and take away and pull apart and experiment with yourself. And often, I found recently, people's first entry to that competition will evolve over the week. So last week's was about tennis, which I'm not a sports guy at all, as anyone who knows me kind of will attest. And I learned something about tennis that time, but also learned a few more tricks about Articulate and how to put that together. So it was all about keeping myself and my skills sharp, but just seeing what other tools are out there. Am I using a knife and fork to do something when there's a better tool out there? That was really why I got involved in it. And it's been largely 99% a very, very positive experience. And the response has been really, really nice as well. In terms of the issues for me that have come out of it, that perhaps someone going into this kind of way of working might need to be aware of, is perfect is the enemy of good. The weekly Learning Heroes Challenge usually drops on a Sunday. I don't know quite how the time difference works, but it means that sometimes I can kind of get the drop on the international audience. So I could getting one of the first 2 or 3 entries. The speed of your entry isn't the point. But it's nice to kind of get a start at the beginning of the week. But of course, if you've got other commitments, this is time you're taking out of your week to do that at home or work. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Sometimes these are quite, working in this way can be quite labour intensive, and to produce the resources to help others can take as long, if not longer, than the thing you created in the first place. And also, I think as well, if you're used to social media and you're used to sharing things on social media, and you're of an age where that's no big deal to you, great. You're probably big enough and ugly enough and practiced enough in social media to deal with it. Nonetheless, having thought of myself as being in that category, you do get people who will pop up. I won't call them trolls, but you do get people who either don't get why you shared something, take the complete sort of opposite reading from it, or will just use the opportunity to kind of push their own agenda, or take you down to bring them up. Which, as anyone who has started on this process and will see from John Stepper's work, that's the complete antithesis of what this is about. So those are the things I would warn people about. Do something to be good, can be done in a timely way that you can turn around timely and share in a way that's not going to disrupt your day job, your home life, and just be prepared for the exposure that puts you exposes you to, good and bad. It is overwhelmingly good, but there are a few occasions where people just don't get why you shared something, and those conversations can go a little bit off kilter sometimes, and that's not to put anyone off this at all. The response is overwhelmingly good, and it is very much a two-way street. So my contacts I've made through the e-learning heroes community, I was getting JavaScript code tips on a Sunday afternoon from a contact in Poland. We're talking this is transnational, across date lines, timelines, across industries. I mean, we're talking about e-learning designers, but we'll work in particular industries. So it's been really, really interesting and very fulfilling for me so far. And I thought, as I said, I felt I've worked in the working out loud way already, and this is now just sharpening my focus on that.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like it's really made an impact on you and kind of your process and your own professional development. And again, that's how I got to kind of know you, is I was just in awe of the things that you were building and putting out there. And I said, I want to know him. He's doing some really cool things. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it is really important to, one, kind of be vulnerable and put yourself out there. I know a lot of times it is scary. I've went through it kind of this week. I'll talk about what I did with Working Out Loud here in a little bit. But it is very kind of scary to put yourself out there, hoping it'll be well received, hoping that people will get it. So kudos for you, John Hill. You're killing it. So you're doing great.
Thank you very much. That's really nice to say.
Yeah, no problem. Simon, you have been dropping knowledge bombs in the chat. I mean, you have just been killing it. So just again, if you're just joining us, Simon Fogg, first time on TLDC, just learned about us 15-20 minutes ago, and he's coming in here, you know, we're putting him right on the spot, and he actually has had more experiences through Working Out Loud. He's went through several circles himself. So Simon, do you care to tell us a little bit about maybe your experiences? How did you get involved with it? What were some of kind of your takeaways, and what did you kind of learn from it?
I'll try to give a rapid summary. I did my first MOOC about 6 years ago. MIT's Learning Creative Learning. Just fell into it. Never done an online course before. Thousands of people, YouTube videos, Google Plus communities. I became a junkie. I did something like 20 to 25 MOOCs within the space of 2 to 3 years, including Future Learn, Harvard, MIT, and Future Learn in the UK. I facilitated quite a few Google Plus communities and got really frustrated that at the end of a MOOC, all the content that you've left is behind the walls of that institution, organization, etc. One of the MOOCs that I did, Harvard's Leaders of Learning, had a hashtag. I followed the hashtag. An Australian lady called Michelle Ockers used the hashtag. I just jumped in and said, what was your Leaders of Learning profile on the course? We got involved in a hefty exchange of tweets when she was on the way to some huge learning and development conference in Colorado. She introduced me to Working Out Loud. She just put it into a tweet and I explored it. I suspect that she had no idea the fire she was going to start. So I must have heard about that at the end of 16. I read up about Working Out Loud. I just looked at the circle guides, I think. I then openly recruited on Twitter and Facebook and elsewhere. I'm doing a circle, who wants to join me? And 4 or 5 people did. And off we went. Nobody had done a circle before. Nobody had used Zoom before. Some of us had used Slack before. So we ran it in Slack, basically, with Zoom. I've become a junkie for doing this. So straight after the first circle, I wanted to do Designing Your Life. That's a book by a couple of Stanford professors, which applies design thinking to your life. Did that as a bit of a circle as well, in terms of online virtual. I then went on to do a number of circles. I've always recruited virtually. I've always recruited to do a virtual circle. Invariably, it's been with first timers, and I try to stick slavishly to the 12 circle guides. So in summary, it's 1 hour a week for 12 weeks on a call. You can do this face to face. You can do it in organizations. You can do it across organizations. I've never done it inside an organization. I've never done it in real life. So there'll be different experiences. So it's an hour a week on the call. You work through the circle guides. There's a bit of a, do you do that before the call? Do you do that during the call? Do you do that after the call? But I've started to get into a routine that we do the exercises, we then do the week 1 call, and then you repeat that for the 12 times. In parallel with that, you pick a goal that you want to achieve during the circle. Something that you're going to learn something from, something that you're passionate about, something that you can't do on your own, which is a bit of a challenge. So you can't have things like losing weight, for example, because that's largely down to you. What else? There was something else. Passionate about it, something new for 12 weeks. I can't remember what the other one was, but there's 4 criteria, and it's really important that you meet the criteria. And then you just work through the circle guides and work on your goal. If you're passionate about your goal, you will spend a long time per week, presumably, working on your goal. So it's like an hour a week for the call, an hour for the circle guides. I'll say an hour for your goal. So that's effectively 3 hours a week for 12 weeks. I've had some memorable working out loud experiences. Probably the biggest one is I'm involved in Enterprise Social Network chat on a Thursday out in North America, I think. It was Ask Me Anything week, November 17, a memorable chat. I record the circle calls. On the free Slack license, you run out of space after about 8 hours of video, 9 hours of video. So I wanted to suss out, could I use another platform? I'd heard of Workplace by Facebook. I just tweeted in the Enterprise Social Network chat, I'd love to do a circle on Workplace. Can anybody help me? This was basically because there were lots of North American consultants. I didn't know who was going to respond. But I got the 2 most senior Workplace by Facebook execs replying to the tweet saying we can sort that out. And within 24 hours, I had a free license to use Workplace. So I've been adding people into that community, and we're running circles. The first circle that I did was a circle of circles. Because it was Workplace, I was trying to push Workplace and myself to the limit. So I just recruited people to do a circle, and I got so many people that we ended up doing 3 circles as part of a super circle. Furthest west person was San Francisco. Furthest east person was New Zealand. Must have had about 15 time zones. So that's why we had to do it as 3 circles ultimately. But I could wrap it on. One of the guys was the global CIO of a services company in Sri Lanka, based in Boston in the States. He was in the circle, which is interesting because most people say that senior managers can't spend the time to do a circle. We had an amazing experience. Months later, the family was on a summer holiday in Sri Lanka. I just said to Madhu, going to be in your home country, any chance of seeing you? And I saw him in Sri Lanka after 24 hours. We'd only met in the circle. So it's amazing experiences. And I've learned loads, obviously, which is the point. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing that in here. And I love that you're like, everything was like this circle. It's almost like a fight club. It's like what happens in the circle stays in the circle. And that's actually one of the rules that Stepper has in his book, interestingly enough, is that circles are confidential. So you should feel comfortable sharing that information with your peers and knowing that it kind of stays where it is. But wow, I did not expect all of that experience, Simon. I'm just flabbergasted by how all the great stuff you came in with. And you actually just got a question, if we can ask you a question. Kristen wants to know, what have you learned about leading the remote groups from the experience?
All the groups that I've facilitated have been global. So there's always been time zones. So I would say the hardest part about doing a circle is recruiting in the first place, because you don't want time wasters. You want people to be there every week for the 12 weeks. You want people to do the exercises. You want people to work on a goal that you can cheer them on. But the second challenge is agreeing a day and a time. On the big one with the circle of circles, I just did like a massive spreadsheet for the whole of a week in half-hour chunks, and I asked people to shade in green when they could definitely make it, red when they were sleeping or they couldn't do it, and amber it wasn't ideal. And then we just took it from there, and that's how we formed the 3 circles. It was pretty painless after everybody had done that exercise, but it was amazing because there are people in some parts of the world that are happy to get up at crazy times. So you should never assume that just because you sleep between the 10 at night and 6 in the morning doesn't mean to say that everybody does that around the world. So there's a bit of flexibility required.
Yeah, for sure. And you actually have a follow-up question on that about when you facilitate these, Simon, are they usually video chat or audio only?
So all the ones I've done I've done 2 with Zoom and Slack. The other 3 and the pilot self-care one were on Workplace using Zoom. Sorry,
So
with
it just kind
video.
of depended.
With video, it's all been video. I suspect that John Stepper's not happy with people videoing the circles because of the confidentiality bit. But I've always hosted the videos in a closed group, which nobody other than the circle can get access to. And it's amazing that people can play the call back if they weren't there, or they can play it back just to play it back because they were there live. I should also say that there's a Working Out Loud week each year, and in the second circle that I did, we marked the week we actually did our circle and put it out on YouTube, so you can actually see a circle in operation on YouTube. I'll put a link in the chat, but that included the guy from Sri Lanka, that included a guy from a lady from Australia that is currently one of the hosts of Enterprise Social Network, a chat, a guy in London, can't remember the other, and a guy from Australia. So there were 2 from Australia, 1 from Sri Lanka, London, and myself in the north of England.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, if you'd be kind enough to share that link about that, I think that'd be a great resource for everybody. So again, thank you for all of that. We really appreciate that. And again, sounds like you have way more experience than we do. We're just getting started. So that's kind of, I guess, the exciting piece of this. If this is the first time you've heard about this, or this is something you're like, hey, I'd really like to work on different stuff with people in the TLDC community, we want you. So please join us. We'd really like for you to be a part of it. J-Rock, I'm going to turn it over to you. Talk about what you're wanting to get out of this experience.
I got 3 things that I want to say. I want to say them quick, and then I want to get out so we can either get Alan or Jack in here as well. All right. Is that cool with everybody?
Sure.
All right. The first thing I want to say, have you guys had any experience with alternate reality games? ARGing, where you where the game actually invades your real world. Like you sign up or you find something online and then you search for it and you find a website. You're like, oh, this is kind of a normal website. And then you look in the source code and all of a sudden you see a secret message in another link. And then next thing you know, someone's calling you in the middle of the night and you're standing up and doing jumping jacks in your bedroom. Anyway, they're kind of fun. ARGs, alternate reality games. But there's a concept in them in that all of us are smarter than any one of us. When you get a whole group of people, they're sharing on the forum, they're posting what happened. You know, like I was walking past this payphone and it rang and I answered and they read these numbers, and then everyone starts trying to work on the numbers and see if it's a Baudot code or whatever. The idea of working out loud is that there are experiences that the whole group has had that you can lean on that you would not be able to come up with on your own. And so that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to get in this group with a bunch of minds and just share with them the things that I'm coming up against and see how, because I mean, everyone here has been talking in the chat about Jonathan Hill. I just love the way your mind moves, the way that you look at the world and the way that you take on problems. And I think people are hungry for that, for viewpoints outside of their own. The second point I want to make is what kind of work do you want to come your way? The kinds of stuff you share should be the stuff you're most passionate about, the stuff that's most fun for you. Definitely working out loud helps everybody with the skills you have. But if you're sharing a bunch of stuff that you're like, I hate doing this, that's probably what you're going to get the reputation as the girl who does this or the guy who does this. So make sure you're sharing the stuff that's the most fun for you. And my final point is, as creators, we're kind of always dragging this huge net behind our heads. And like all the experiences we have are getting stuck in that net. And you never know when something you've been carrying around is maybe like the gem of an idea. Like, oh, I kind of want to make a course with a scrolling background that feels like a video game. And then someone else like Melissa Milloway posts, hey, check out these websites where they have scrolling backgrounds. And also Stranger Things is cool. And the next thing you know, like they all hook up and connect into something that lights you up. So you never know when one of your ideas is going to connect with something that somebody else who's also passionate about this stuff and who's also thinking about it, they're going to say something that's going to like assemble Voltron in your mind. And so those are the 3 things that I really wanted to come out. And yeah, sorry if that was a bit out there. That's kind of who I am.
So I have to admit, when you started down this path, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But you had a great way of bringing it back around. So I'll give you your due for that. So that was great. Thank you, J-Rock, for joining us. I'll go ahead and close out your video, drop in the chat where everybody can find you. I'll bring on Mr. Alan Natachu. And as I'm doing that, I guess I can kind of share what I'm wanting to get out of the experience, if I can find where Alan is in our list today. I had him earlier. Where are you, Alan? There you are. Okay. So for me, the reason that I'm interested in doing this is I have been kind of nursing my website and blog for a very long time. I bought my domain name, gosh, probably 2 or 3 years ago. I just kept making excuses. I was like, oh, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Nobody checks that thing, whatever. But then for me, obviously, if you're building things, sharing things, all of that stuff, that's all part of your brand. And so I feel like when somebody learns about you, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google your name. And it just so happens that my name also is the same name as somebody that writes trashy romance novels. And I didn't want people to think that that was me, for better, for worse. I mean, no judgments, I guess, but that's just not my jam. So that, no, whatever. So you would search my name. That would be the first hit that you would get would be, these books. And I was like, okay, I don't want people to confuse that with me. And so I really kind of got my stuff together after having these conversations with like Jonathan Hill and Jack and Alan about, we can all support each other to do this right. So kind of my challenge for this particular week is I have blogged every single day this week, and I have not blogged in about 1.5 years. And I thought it'd be really difficult for me to come up with information to blog about. But I was able to take something I did for school and cut it up into a blog post. I was able to take inspiration from a tweet, cut it up into a blog post. I was able to talk about closed captioning in Google Slides and PowerPoint, put it in a blog post. So it's been scary, and especially the research piece that I shared. I was really worried that there would be people coming after me because some of what I said was a little bit provocative, especially as I was like sharing kind of my schema and coding and all of that. But knock on wood, I haven't had any bad whatever. And to Jonathan's point, that's kind of part of it. There's always going to be those people that say stuff and do stuff to try to bring you down. But you just have to say, you know what, just because they don't agree with me, like that's their prerogative, and just kind of move on. So again, that's kind of where I am in the working out loud piece. So next week, I'm hoping to blog again every single week, every single day rather, and just continue to put out my own content because I'm so good at finding other people's content. I wanted to share my own. So that's just kind of my quick story. And with that, we have Alan with us. So Alan, go ahead and tell us, well, first introduce yourself. If people don't know Alan, you should know Alan. And two, talk to us a little bit about what you want to get out of this Work Out Loud experience.
Hi, I'm Alan. Hopefully I'm coming in okay. Let me know. I work here at Madison Area Technical College at Madison, Wisconsin, learning experience designer. I'm going to be celebrating my 10-year anniversary with the college in August, and just did the math on that. That's kind of awesome. What I expect from the Work Out Loud is I hope to start with the basics. I've been noticing as I go through my work with the faculty here, my work going to conferences, and my work interacting with my peers online is that I should have a good foundation of L&D practices. That's something I fear that I've missed out starting here and previously with Apple, and previously with that starting as early as a tutor at the college that I went to, the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I've been on this kind of L&D track for a long time, and it just never really hit me until I started really developing my PLN a couple of years ago. It started really interacting with my peers online on Twitter. And now I find myself here trying to get a lot more from my peers, trying to help me find that good L&D foundation. But I hope to share my hacks. If you haven't seen one of my presentations here on TLDC or don't follow me on Twitter, I have a lot of ways of completing stuff. I have a very MacGyver knack, and I love sharing that with people. So share with me, and I'll definitely share with you.
Love that, love that, love that. Yeah. So it sounds like we're all kind of aligned on what we're wanting to do. We want to, number one, better ourselves, right? So get something out of it, grow our own skills, but then two, also add value to our community. So I feel like that is obviously what it's all about. So again, if you just joined us, we're talking about working out loud circles. This is something we would like to do here on TLDcast. We do have a channel on the Slack channel if you want to join us to get started. And if I can, Simon, I'm gonna pick your brain for a second. What advice, or I know you just gave us so much good information a minute ago, but like what advice would you kind of give us as we're starting to get started on this journey? What are some pro tips that you can give us?
You definitely need to be up for sticking the course for 12 weeks. You definitely need to be able to reserve the slot for the calls each week for 12 weeks. I would say that if you can't do 9 of the 12, it starts to become a bit pointless, even if the video, because obviously you're an important member of the circle. And if you're one person down out of 5, then that's a lot of input and support out the window, basically. Definitely do all the circle guide exercises. John's written it in such a way where if you're slack and you've got no time, do this one thing. If you're a bit of a teacher's pet, that's my paraphrase, you can do all these extra things, but there's here's what we expect, and I always do here's what I expect. Some of the exercises people might think are blindingly obvious and not that important, and potentially even childish. That's a bit strong. But I would say that one of the benefits of doing a circle is that you pick up all sorts of digital skills. Just to tie this into designing your life, one of the exercises in designing your life is to do some life design conversations where you find 3 people that are doing what you might want to do as a career next, and you contact them and you do a life design conversation. Now, if I hadn't have done a working out loud circle immediately prior to reading that book, I'd have found that really intimidating, and I probably wouldn't have done it. But it was effectively easy as a direct result of doing a circle, because you're already learning how to connect to people, and you're giving and you're contributing to the other person with no expectation of getting anything back. So that's like a powerful thing in terms of networking. You know, if you hear the word networking, lots of people cringe, apart from the extroverts who love it, etc. But I just find that working out loud in a virtual circle is an amazing way of getting introverts involved, because it's all online and virtual. If they can get over this thing about being on the video, which I know is an issue for some people. Yeah.
Great tips. I really appreciate, obviously, one, making sure that people are committed, getting that up front. I think that's a great tip. 2, kind of getting different types of people together, get people out of their comfort zone. There's a friend of mine that actually talks about networking, and he says the reason that so many people hate networking, he says you should blame your mother, because you're taught not to speak to strangers, and that's kind of ingrained in us. That's kind of like his little thing about it. But yeah, great tips, Simon. We really appreciate all of your insights on here today. We really, really do. And we might be hitting you up for even more pro tips as we're going through this. Jonathan Hill, you had a question in the chat. Jack is really interested to know about what you're going to continue to do on this working out loud journey. So kind of what are you thinking about? Do you want to keep the articulate hero challenges? You want to do something else?
Yeah, I think I'm going to continue with the articulate e-learning heroes challenges, definitely. And that, I think, is going to feed into building an independent site that will kind of host a selection of those, and move down the route of having an online portfolio outside of LinkedIn or Twitter threads. And my experience on a MOOC with FutureLearn a little while back on personal learning networks kind of indicated to me that you can use the different channels for slightly different ends. So I'd probably start to treat my Twitter feed as this kind of spine, the index for all of my activity. And from that, then you can kind of find out what I'm doing in a bit more detail. I'll still focus on LinkedIn and Twitter, But I think in the background, I'm going to be building my own site. And that's the rough plan at the moment. And I think I don't want to give myself too much to do, but that feels like it's something that I could achieve. And it's kind of within my current capabilities, but will, in the process, add to my capabilities, build my network, and hopefully build relationships that unlock opportunities. And, you know, I'm not sitting here saying I want another job. You know, I don't want people to think working out loud is just about I want another job. You know, a big component of it is about job shaping. And I think any extra skills that I can bring, because like J-Rock, I'm the lone gunman in my company for the thing that we do. The more that I can do, the more skills I have, the more I can shape my job. And the more I can shape my job in a way that, you know, helps myself, but also the company, and takes everyone forward. You know, the generosity that John talks about, I think is very important as well. You know, so that outward facing, having a website where people can come and see what I'm doing, kind of window into my world, is I think going to be a very important part of this. So that's definitely, and website building and the like. It's, you know, I've sort of tinkered with it. That's something I know relatively little about, and that's a skill I want to develop in the process.
Follow-up question to you, Jonathan Hill. Obviously, I know that you have gotten a lot of comments, looks, connections outside of the UK, right? I think you told me that most of your connections are now us US people that are just in awe of everything that you're doing. How has that been received at your workplace? Have you had that conversation about, you know, hey, look what I'm doing? Have you spoken to your manager? Have other people kind of seen that you're like a one-man band, but then you're trying to expand out kind of your brand and what you're doing with it? And how has that went?
Yeah, I mean, this is perhaps another aspect we need to talk about more generally, is that we have circles and they'll be confidential. But obviously, when you're initially creating that circle and going out into the world, you know, putting stuff out into the world to get feedback, you know, you have to be mindful if you work for an organization that they've probably got a social media policy, and how you conduct yourself is, you know, could reflect on your company. So I've always been very upfront with our marketing guys and my immediate manager and the MD of the company about what I'm doing. And the most recent e-learning heroes challenge, the crossword challenge, in fact, used the opportunity to kind of celebrate the fact that the company I work for is 20 years old this year, and the crossword was about my company. So you can see there are opportunities where your personal brand and your employer's brand kind of converge. So yeah, you know, it's not gone unnoticed. It's not been received negatively, but I am always upfront about what I'm doing. I make sure that, you know, I don't do anything that brings not only my personal brand into disrepute, but anyone connected to me, and just remaining very kind of very positive about that. But it is a good question. It is a balancing act. I think if you were self-employed or a contractor and you didn't have an immediate kind of employer, the rules of the ground would be slightly different. But it's worth bearing in mind if you're moving into this way of working. If you work for a large organization, check your employment contract, because there could be stuff in there about how you conduct yourself on social media, outside of course, you know, the circle model that John Stepper condones, with the confidentiality involved in that. You put stuff on LinkedIn or Twitter, it's out there for everyone to see.
Good points. Alan, I'm going to ask you the exact same question, because Alan and I both actually work in higher education, and that's a different beast all in itself. So what has been your experience with sharing and kind of the reception at work and how that's went?
That's a good question. I do share, and I do tag my employer when I have something that's really interesting or really innovative that they should be aware of. That's when I bring them into the fold, and they follow me. So I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is my education. This is how I'm giving back to the community. This is how I am working, because when working with faculty, I'm working a lot with people who maybe have not touched virtual reality, or maybe are new to Blackboard tests, maybe even new to Blackboard. That's our LMS. You know, they just got hired on as a part-time faculty member here, and I had to help them get up to speed. So I do a lot of sharing, and I do a lot of sharing because I know what it's like to start new. I also know that a lot of people don't ask questions. When they come in to see me, I'll run through a spiel or say, hey, these are the options, but they don't ask any questions. And I just want to provide as many resources and as many opportunities to invite them back or to continue the conversation.
I'm smiling because I noticed your lapel mic. I mean, you take this seriously, so I love it. Love it, love it. No, I think that's great. Great advice. I know for me personally, I started to kind of clean up my act and mind my P's and Q's a little bit more when the president of the university, as well as the dean of my college, started following me on Twitter. Even though I'm fairly certain they have social media managers, still don't want to have anything bad come across that they could potentially see. But I'm very lucky. Most of the people that I work with are very supportive of what I do and what I'm trying to get out there and try to grow. So I think that does matter, but I do also think it's obviously a concern throughout. I cannot believe we only have 15 minutes left. I mean, this has just been kind of crazy about just how quickly things have went. What I'd like to do really quickly for those that maybe don't have the book, maybe you're still on the fence about this working out loud thing. I'm actually going to pull up the chapter in the book where Stepper is talking a little bit about the work out loud circles. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of his like 5 important keys to the circle. The first one I talked about just a little bit about them being confidential. Think of them as Fight Club, right? I mean, you don't talk about anything that's going on outside of it. It's a safe place. People shouldn't feel like they're judged or gossiped about. What happens in the circle stays in the circle unless members explicitly agree otherwise. Now, Simon, I'd like to get your thoughts on this next one. According to Stepper, he says that circles should include from 2 to 5 people. He thinks that 5 might be a little bit too much for a free-form discussion, and 2, not enough for good feedback. So what's been your experience on that one, Simon?
I think it should be 5. If you imagine a 60-minute time slot, if you've got 5 people, by the time you've started and closed, you get to 10 minutes each, effectively. In fact, it got so chaotic in one circle that we actually changed the agenda about halfway through the 12 weeks, where we basically said that we'd give each person 10 minutes of the call to use how they saw fit. I don't think that's ideal either, because you do need to go through the structure. But it's certainly a way. Usually what happens is that there's a bit of a slow start as people get to know each other if they're strangers. You're also interacting virtually, but you rapidly get to the point where you're almost their best mates because of the amount of time and what you've covered in the circle, that it just becomes really easy to talk and talk and talk. You know, you need a pretty strong facilitator to keep it on track.
Okay, Jack just dropped a great question, and I guess whoever can answer it, but I'm always looking at Simon. Simon's like our expert. I love it. How would you differentiate a mastermind from a circle? What would be the difference between those 2 types of groups?
I've got limited understanding of mastermind groups. My understanding is that you usually pay a fee to join them. And it's usually for people that are running their own businesses. That might be nonsense. There's no numbers limit, is there? I'm assuming
I don't
that mastermind.
think so.
I'm assuming. What's the guy Robbins called? Tony Robbins. I'm assuming that he would say that his stadium things are effectively mastermind. Well, no, they're not, because it's effectively him, isn't it? It's effectively him. It's not other people. It is interesting because I did compare action learning sets. Have you heard of action learning sets with circles? And I did a pretty comprehensive blog post on that because I've done both of those. I've never done a mastermind group. I'm not sure if I would. And it strikes me that that's more peer coaching, which is interesting because I do find doing circles that you get lots of advice and content from other people as you wrestle with, serious things in your life and career, because people often are doing goals that are incredibly deep to their working life.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I have very limited experience either. John or Alan, do you know anything about mastermind groups?
No, I've not encountered them personally, no, but it sounds very interesting. But I think we need to do the circles first before we move on to anything like that.
I did join a master's group with Sam, and yeah, it was a lot of. I'm trying to figure out what's the difference between his group and a circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like Kristen did one in the previous cycle, and I know there was a lot of interaction, a lot of going over our kind of L&D trouble spots, what's working, what's not, and try to get feedback and within a confidential space. So there's that confidentiality element to it. For this particular mastermind, we also had it recorded, and only us as participants had access to the recording after the fact. And it was something like, it was a real great experience for me to go through, and that was my first step in trying to get that L&D baseline that I was talking about earlier. So that's what I got out of that group. Got to meet some great people, got to grow better connections with the people within my particular group, and finally get that kind of L&D baseline. And I'm going to start going.
No, you're fine. May I ask a follow-up question? Because going back to kind of those 5 things, that's kind of the go-to information about the Working Out Loud circles. One of those is Stepper says there needs to be a facilitator. Somebody needs to be facilitating that group. So for your experience, Alan, in that mastermind, was Sam more of like a facilitator, or was he kind of like a coach, or what did that role kind of look like? And then Simon, if I may, I'd like to get kind of your thoughts about that facilitator role.
Great facilitator. Yeah, I took that role and just ran with it. It was great.
Okay. Simon, what does a facilitator look like in a Work Out Loud circle?
I just wanted to say something briefly about Mastermind. I found an article while you've been talking. I posted it. I'm a big fan of Michael Hyatt. It's on his website. It's not him writing it, but he's really into all that. I think with Mastermind groups as well, there's a bit of a selection process. So I think the person that runs it has got pretty demanding entry criteria in terms of what you're going to expect and what you're not going to expect. I have never turned anybody down in a circle. So if you invite people publicly, you run the risk of getting all sorts of people, but I've never turned anybody down. That's not because I'm desperate. It's because I need 5 people and off we go. You know, once I've got 5, off we go. You know, in terms of facilitator, I would say it needs to be a member of the circle. So I don't think it should be somebody that's not doing the circle. It's one of the 5. And there needs to be a timekeeper just to make sure that you stick to the time. But it's really important that the facilitators doing the exercises, doing the goal. So it's just like another normal person in the circle.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, Simon, if that facilitator had to be kind of outside or they were able to also be a participant. But it sounds like you're saying that they're also participating in the circle, correct? Sure.
You've also reminded me that I should say that Working Out Loud is huge in Germany relatively for other countries in the world. And they're doing all sorts of leadership development, onboarding of new employees in major organizations in Germany, like Bosch particularly. And I'm mentioning that because they've got coaches. So they've got so many circles that they're actually coaching a cadre or a group of leaders. I don't know if the coaches sit in on the circles to observe, etc. But there's almost like a whole infrastructure in some organizations going in as part of leadership development and personal development, using Working Out Loud circles as just one of the mechanisms. You know, onboarding new employees would be a classic use case. I'd love to do circles in an organization, but I work in an organization where, you know, where social media is like a swear word and it's all playtime and it's all, you know, a waste of time. It's not real work, etc. So all the stuff that I'm doing is outside of work, basically.
Man, Simon, you struck a nerve with me. I live on Twitter. That's like my second home. There's actually a conference going on about a learning management system called Canvas. And one of the keynotes, Malcolm Gladwell actually said something in his keynote. People tweeted that if you have a job and you're on Twitter, you're like not doing it right, or you're not supposed to be on Twitter if you have a job, or something to that effect. And yeah, exactly, Alan. I had the exact same reaction, but it's really kind of hard if you're not there. You don't know the entire context of everything. Real quickly, because we only have 5 minutes left. Again, time has just flown by. I just want to touch on the last two kind of criteria about the working out loud circles. So Simon already hit this. Basically, you need to meet for 1 hour a week for 12 weeks, and then talk about kind of those deliverables and habits, which is good. And then there's also a structured curriculum. So Steppers actually made these work out loud guides for each week that you can access, and they can kind of help push you and give you information about what you need to be talking about and that kind of stuff. So all in, it looks like it's a really robust program. Want to invite everybody that's still here. It looks like several people have purchased the book, which is fantastic. We really love for you to be a part of it. We'll have 2-3 circles. I don't know if we'll get to your level, Simon, of the circle of circle, but we'll see what we can do with it. Any last comments about this? Any kind of fears, doubts, reservations? Anything that anybody wants to say just about this process, the journey? Simon, I'll start with you. What do we need? What do we need to do? Give us a pep talk. Give us some inspiration to roll into it with.
So I would simply say, I believe that every professional should do at least one circle, and they should be doing that as soon as possible. Just to experience working online, working with people that you've never worked with. You learn a set of digital skills that I don't think you'd learn in as concentrated a period of time as you do in a circle. And on the back of that, the circle guides are self-explanatory. If you can run a meeting of any sort, you can run a circle. You don't have to prepare the 12 weeks ahead of time. You can do it week by week by week as you prepare. That's how I did it. That's how lots of us are doing it. The agenda's on there. The timings are on there. What you need's on there. You don't need to read the book before you start. The book's referenced in the guides. You don't have to read the book because the content's in the guides. You can read the chapters, etc., etc. So I would say, if you're short of time, why not just start a circle and get on with it and not wait,
Great. That's what we're going to try to do. So thank you for that. If you are on the fence about the book, thank you again, Simon, for saying that a lot of it is referenced. But Jack actually in the channel talked about just his way of writing is just so good. And Simon, I think you also said that a little bit earlier, that it's like really easy to understand and pick up and get value out of. So I don't care to buy a book if I'm going to get other value out of it. So I just want to throw that out there. Jonathan Hill, what do you think? What do you think about this challenge?
I'm going to paraphrase Roddy Piper in the film Them. It's an old one. I'm here to chew gum, make connections, get better, new and more fulfilling possibilities, and I'm all out of gum. This is now imperative to me. It's kind of like, it just feels like the thing I need to do at this point in my career. Partly for sanity, career safety, and just personal fulfillment. And I'm very in to go. Really, really looking forward to it.
Alan, any final words?
Ready to start. Ready to share.
Excellent. Well, again, everyone that's here, you're welcome to join us. We'd love to have you be a part of this journey. Thank you so much. I am not sharing that notepad file. J-Rock, you can do it yourself. The folks on the video, if you want to drop where people can find you, we would love to have people connect. And again, if you haven't heard of our Slack channel, it's tldchat.us if you want to be part of that. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. You really were the MVP today. We weren't expecting it. We didn't know how we were going to talk about today. I usually do like the wacky inflatable tube man version of videos, and you killed it for us. Yeah, I totally. So thank you so much for your time and all of your advice today. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for your patience with the microphone. I just need to know what happens to the chat. Does the chat get collated and put somewhere?
Great question. So as soon as we turn off the recording, it actually, the link that got you here, it is already, basically you get back into the replay and you can go back through the chat that way. And then sometimes Luis, who is the guy that runs TLDC, he actually will sometimes put the chat log on our blog post about today's session. So yeah, you're not going to lose the chat. It doesn't go away. So maybe we should be more vigilant of what we put in there. But anyway, thanks again. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Join us if you want to be part of it, and that way we can all learn and grow together. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care, everyone. Bye.